We're going to look at some of the verbs that scholars use when they talk about their sources and their data, and the effect that these verbs have on how confident they sound about the factual value of their sources. Here are some examples of a couple very different reporting verbs that the authors use in this article about active procrastination. They say, Chu and Choi found that active procrastinators did possess desirable behavioral and attitudinal characteristics leading to positive personal outcomes. When they say found or showed or describe or note, verbs like that treat what is being discussed as very well supported fact, whereas more tentative uses of ideas are introduced with things like proposed or suggested or argued or claimed. And in this case, proposed was a new theory that these researchers were introducing to explain and interpret some of their findings. So the different range of verbs that people will use when they're talking about their research and other people's research is important to take note of. And you'll find some interesting differences across the articles that you look at. Here's some more findings from Ken Hyland's research, looking at thousands of articles in different disciplines and how the researchers used verbs to report their findings. He's listed here in this table the most common verbs that were found in the articles from each of these disciplines. Okay, so we can see that in the field of philosophy, where a lot of the research is interpretive and centers around different theories about the ideas in question, you see verbs like say, suggest, argue, claim, point out, propose, think. These don't suggest very definite grounding in fact for what they're talking about in their sources, but definitely show things that are up for interpretation. You'll find some differences in physics. If you look down here, develop, report, study. Those sound very confident in terms of the factual value of what people are presenting there. And you'll find that most fields have a mix with things that emphasize the interpretation of the data that's being discussed, suggest, argue, and other things that sound much more definitive in terms of the factual value. Show, explain, find out, find, point out. And you might find that these occur in different sections of an article, while show, explain, find, demonstrate, report might all occur in the introduction or background section of an article where scholars are talking about what has been previously found in other studies. They might use things like suggest, argue, propose when they are interpreting some of the implications of their findings and trying to say what those facts mean. So these are just some things to keep in mind when you're looking at how sources are being used, and many of these are going to line up well and help you note some of the rhetorical uses outlined by Joe Bizup in his Beam vocabulary, with things like note, describe, find, point out, lining up with background or information functions of that source use, and things like argue, claim, propose, lining up with interpretive exhibit uses or argument functions of those sources. So those are just some things to keep in mind, and they'll help you notice some of the differences in how sources are being used in different parts of research articles and used differently in different fields.